Chapter 5 talks about system of linear equations. When I hear the word system of linear equations, that means two straight lines, right? Two or more, but linear lines. That means straight lines. This one says solve the system of linear equations by graphing. So we're going to have to graph those two lines actually. If you look, there's one line in here, and then there's another one right in here. And when I say graphing, what you have to do is you have to think about slope-intercept form right away, which is y equals mx plus b. And we've talked about m is the slope, and b is my y-intercept, or we call b is the beginning, right? Slope is the rate of change. So let's look at the first equation actually. The first equation says y equals x minus 1. I would like to first find out from this equation, what is my b? What is the beginning? What is the y-intercept? My first point, my initial value. All those are the names for b. So b is the number that is not attached to the x by a multiplication. So the number that's not attached to the x by multiplication is this one over here, right? And that is -1. So for the red equation, b, the beginning, the initial value, is -1. That is going to be my first point on the y-axis. And then I have to look for slope. Well, slope is the number before the x. And right now, I do not see any numbers in front of the x. However, I know I see how many x's? 1, right? This is indeed 1x. So even though I don't see the 1 in front of it, I know it is 1. So my slope for the red equation, my m for the red equation, is actually 1, right? And now slope has to be a fraction. It's rise over run. So the 1 has to be written as a fraction, which we can always put over 1. So I know if it's +1, I'm going to rise up, and 1 over, and always to the right. Let's graph that. So the beginning, right, the first point on the y-axis is on -1, which is over here. And then the slope says from that initial value, go 1 unit up and 1 over. So from here, I'm going to go 1 up, 1 over. And I do that every single time, right? That is the slope. Slope says it's always the same. It's not going to change. You're always going to go 1 up and 1 over. You really need just 2 points. But if you're trying to solve system of linear equations by graphing, it's usually helpful to do a couple of these because you don't want to make a mistake when you're creating your lines to see where those two lines will meet. Now let's look at the blue equation. The b, right, my initial value is the number that's not attached to the x by a multiplication. So b, y-intercept is 3. Now what is my slope over here? Well, the slope is again the number before the x. This time around it's a -x or -1x, right? So my slope is -1, and as a fraction it has to be over 1 if it's not a fraction, right? Now since the 1 is negative, that means you're going to go 1 unit down, and please remember you're always going to go to the right. Let's graph that. So b is 3, 1, 2, 3 on the y-axis. And then I go 1 down, 1 over from the beginning, right? From the initial value. 1 down, 1 over every single where, and guess what? I already see where those two lines meet, right? So I'm going to extend them so it looks kind of pretty. Now, the solution to the system is where the two lines meet. And these two lines have one point in common. They will have this point right here. They have that point right in here in common. So what is the solution to the system? Well, let's see. It's going to be on x-axis 1, 2. And on one y-axis, it's 1. Remember, ordered pair, right? X and y. This is the solution to the system of linear equations of these two by graphing. Let's look at another problem real quick. In here. Wow. All right, so I do have two equations, and I'm going to color code them for you guys. One is in here. Another one is right in here, right? And what do I have to do? I have to think about y equals mx plus b every single time. Y equals mx plus b. Now let's look at the blue equation. The blue equation, well, I usually say let's look at our beginning, right? The b, the y-intercept, the initial value. Well, I don't see any b in here, right? Well, it's empty. If it's empty, that means there is none. It's a 0. So for here, b equals 0. What is the m? What is the number before the x? How many x do I see? 1. So m equals 1, and it has to be a fraction. So it's 1 over 1. 1 unit up, 1 unit over. Let's graph it. I'm starting on 0. 0 is always in here, right? And then from there I go 1 up, 1 over. 1 up, 1 over. And I am going to give myself just a couple of these, right? And then I will connect them. I will suggest to use a ruler if possible. Now let's look at the red equation. The red equation, beginning, right? At the initial value is right in here, so b equals 1. And the slope is the number before the x. So the m equals 2. And it's going to be 2 over 1 as a fraction. 2 units up, 1 unit over. So let's plot b, right? My y-intercept on y-axis, which is over here. And from here I go 2 units up, 1 over. And 2 units up, 1 over. 2 units up, 1 over. So let me connect these points. Right. And if I go, what I'm going to give myself, guys, I know it's always 1 over and 2, right down. You see how important it is to give yourself a couple more points? So this is how it will go. And these two lines meet over here. So the solution to that system, right, is always 2 up, 1 over, is right in here. And what is that point? Well, let's see. On x-axis, I'm 1 unit to the left, right? Remember, always first x and then there's y, right, for my coordinates. X is -1 and then 1 down, which is also -1. And this will be your answer. And let's look at one more thing real briefly. You will see sometimes problem like this, that it's going to tell you to match the system with the graph. My preference is always look at my y-intercept because I know where that point actually is on a y-axis, right? So let's see. My y-intercept in here is 4. And the y-intercept in here is -1. I'm going to look at strictly at my y-axis and see which one of these graphs will actually match that. And I'm looking for y-intercepts. Now if I look, right, if I look with my ninja eye, I see that these points go by 2's. And I'm looking at for +4 and -1. Oh, I already found it. If this goes by 2, this is 2, this is 4. So this line does have a y-intercept over here, which will be 4. And then -1 is right in between, right? If they go by 2's, this is going to be -2. This will be -1. So these actually in here, they are on +4 and -1. So this is a possibility. Now, let me see if these two have it. If they do, then I'm going to have to look at the slopes. Let me see. Nope, absolutely not. It doesn't have +4, right? +4 is in here, so that's out. And this one is just a little bit above +4, so that one is out as well. So this will be the answer. If you want to double check yourself, the slope says go 1 unit up, right? And 1 unit over every single time. So it will be half up, half over, right? Half up, half over every single time. And yes, this is actually the answer to this. Make sense? Yeah.